Genesis chapter 1, page 1, beginning at verse 14 on to the end of the chapter. Genesis chapter 1, beginning at verse 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be a sign and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and to rule over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." So evening and the morning were the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and every thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image God created him, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food." And it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Trevor?
Good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. Glad that we're here together to delve into God's Word and be encouraged there. We are continuing our series going through the qualifications for elders. This morning we'll be looking at just two. I was trying really hard this week to cram four of them in. These two are really closely connected. The other two are really closely connected. They're kind of connected to each other, but not really enough. And that's where the breaking point came. So anyway, those will be for another one. But this morning we'll be looking at one that comes at the end of Titus 1 verse 8, which is disciplined in the ESV. We'll also be looking at one that comes at the beginning or towards the very beginning of the list in 1 Timothy. In chapter 3, verse 2, we're focusing on the word the ESV translates as respectable. Combining these ideas, kind of summing up what we're getting at, we're talking about being above reproach. That's our master theory or our predominating qualification is being above reproach. That comes from both letters, both lists. Today we're focusing on being above reproach in well-ordered living. I didn't want to change the main title or format. We might even say, though, that we're talking about being above reproach through well-ordered living. And maybe you're wondering what Genesis 1 has to do with elder qualifications. And if you're curious about that, good. I'm really excited about that part. But what I will give you right now to think about so that you don't miss too much is as Bill read that very long passage. I appreciate Bill's patience in reading that. As God created everything, order is unmistakably present. In fact, one great expression or way to think about the creation of the heavens and the earth is God ordering chaos. God taking nothing and not only making everything instead of nothing, but also ordering everything in the midst of and instead of the nothingness and the lack of order. So order comes into it, and we'll see if there's any closer connection to that. Spoiler alert, there is. But first, we're going to talk about that word from Timothy, which is disciplined. I'm sorry, this was at the end of Titus 1:8. Disciplined is how it is in the ESV. We've been using what I've decided to call the AMTAP method of study, which is as many translations as possible. That's how we're getting to know these words and our terms. So AMTAP is our method. Hey, you know what? It means you'll remember it. So as many translations as possible. There's a lot of ways that you can go about your Bible study and trying to understand better the words that are written. Very commonly, we go into the original language, Hebrew or Aramaic for the Old Testament. There's small parts of the Old Testament that are Aramaic. And usually Greek for the New Testament. We run into problems with that because you and I don't know Greek or Hebrew very well. Most of us. There's some exceptions here. And so while that's a fine thing to do, and there's a lot of resources at our fingertips to be able to help us through that, sometimes we end up in trouble. And I don't predict a whole lot of trouble for us in any of these things, but I wanted to reinforce through this series that there's another way to go about that without feeling like you're trying to translate yourself, and that is to rely somewhat on the work of other scholars who are Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic scholars and who have done that work. And so by looking at as many translations as possible, we're getting kind of a consensus. We're asking as many scholars as possible what they think these words mean. Right? That's why we do the AMTAP method. And so that's what we've been doing. Now, ESV is one of only 4 that uses the word disciplined. I didn't put up on the screen the very long list of everyone else who has self-control. So self-controlled is what you'll find if you're not using one of these 7 translations, probably, almost certainly. I didn't look up every translation that exists. That would be ETTE or something, but that's not catchy at all, so we don't do it. We do AMTAP because that we can remember. But so these are kind of some of the words that are involved. So self-controlled, disciplined, temperate. Not much doing, but it's worth asking. We know what these words mean. How objective is our application of this able to be? And a lot of these concepts, we can make pretty short work of this one because we've kind of talked about this through several of the qualifications. We've talked about what it is to be regulated and have control of yourself and not to be impulsive or not to be demanding, not to be insatiably greedy, and to be able to subdue your own passions and desires. We've done some talking about being disciplined. One of the things that does come out of just peeking at the Greek sometimes is that you find words that you know or might recognize from other spheres. And maybe you recognize this or not, depends on which video games you've played. That's how I recognize the Greek word behind this one. But the word here is en Kratos. And Kratos is a video game character that we're not going to get into, and that's not a recommendation either. But the Greek word has the idea of power or might. And so, and the prefix en is usually how it's transliterated. David will tell you, probably most would tell you that Greek prefixes, especially prepositions, are kind of squirrely. They don't behave the way that we expect words to. They end up meaning a lot of things. One of the worst transgressors, I'm told, is epi. But we're dealing with en. And one of the ways that's been most helpful to me to think about that concept is in vital connection with. And I'm definitely open to suggestions on better ways to think about that. But since we're doing just a cursory thing and not pretending to be Greek scholars, we can roughly think about the fact that I, as a qualified man, or if I'm qualified at all, I probably have a healthy connection with power and might. And that shows up in the concept of discipline, right? We might even think of Paul saying things like, I buffet my body to bring it under submission, right? That's kind of we don't think of that maybe directly this way, but that's kind of a powerful idea. I have the power to subdue my flesh. That requires strength, right? So one of the things that we might not obviously think about when we think about the qualifications for elders is that the elder can't be a weak man. Now, we're not talking about what you can bench in the gym. We're not talking about if he's a member of the 1,000-pound club or anything like that. We're talking about as a person. Good for you. We're talking about as a person, does the person have strength? Now, from looking at some of the other qualifications, and we can't let ourselves get too segregated between these and forget the others while we're studying these, is that we also can't be appointing a bully, right? If we were talking about psychology, we ask the question, is a bully really the strong person in the situation? And we might say that they're not. But when we talk about the elder needs to be a strong person, they need to be able to use that strength to regulate themselves, their own life, their own passions, that they keep themselves under subjection, but that they're also strong enough to protect the sheep, strong enough to move the sheep, strong enough to lead the sheep, strong enough to keep up with the sheep, strong enough to round up the sheep as needed, strong enough to pull the sheep out of a situation that the sheep shouldn't be in, right? And we're talking, again, not about muscular strength. And so when we think about this idea of discipline and this idea of being in vital connection with one's power or might, I think I can't help think of the definition that we usually throw at the word or concept of meekness, right? Which is power under control or strength restrained. The idea that Jesus was meek doesn't mean that he was weak, right? It means that his great power was under his control. He didn't go using his power in ways that weren't best for the kingdom. Neither will the elder. That's kind of all I have on discipline. But we're going to know that it kind of has a good bit to do with the next thing we're going to talk about, which is this idea of being respectable. That's how it's translated in the ESV. We have a bit more range here. And this is kind of one of the things. This is a good reason to start with the AMTAP method, because you at least get a better rounded idea of the range of meaning of whatever Greek or Hebrew word is involved or being translated. So we have kind of a wide range here, usually kind of one-offs, but we do have the most common translation here being respectable. The second most common is King James, New King James, and Webster. Those three, again, have of good behavior or something like that. And that's great. But these are kind of unique. And one of the things that happens when we use this method is that we might raise our eyebrows and say, why in the world would a translator use a word like that? We kind of had it last time I was up talking about one of the words. We were looking at the phrase "a lover of good," and I think it was the Young's literal translation, which I usually like, and maybe King James or something like that, that had "lover of good men." Like it added the word "men," and admittedly, not being a Greek scholar, if I haven't emphasized that enough, I don't know if I haven't found anything justifying that addition. I don't know what they're using. Maybe it's a different manuscript or something that they're using. But that kind of makes you go, why'd they do that? And you might dig deeper. And you might, like we did with Lover of Good Men, not find a really good answer. And then you just kind of move on with your life, because that's okay. But sometimes, like here, what you find when you raise your eyebrows is I do when I come to these terms being translated here for respectable. Like, what are they picking up on here with the word orderly, or why is order or orderly kind of being involved here? The word decorous that Darby uses, we don't use too much, but I think we kind of all have an idea. You might have a picture maybe of an officer or something in full dress being decorous, or think of the mannerisms or the lifestyle or the conduct becoming of an officer, or language like that. I don't know why, but I associate that with kind of that mental image. But I was curious about why the word order is used here. And so my second step, not my first usually, but my second step, my next step is going to be that I'm going to peek at what's the word here, and is it one that I recognize? And this one is one that I recognize. This is a Greek word that you know. I nearly promise. Because the Greek word is cosmos. It's conjugated, or there's probably a more accurate word for it in this situation, but it's adjusted a little bit. But it's the Greek word cosmos. You know what the cosmos is. You know what something cosmic is. It has to do usually with the idea of the world or the universe at large, right? All that's been made. And so, great, I know the word, but then, wait a minute, what's the context that we just met this word? This is a qualification for the elder. If I didn't know any better, and thank goodness we do, we're not going to make this mistake, but I was like, does an elder have to be like worldly, like natural? Like what's the concept here? What's the idea? And so one of the next things that you do is you use one of the many tools available for you. And you probably want to find out other places in the New Testament that this word is used. And failing that, you might look into other Greek texts or use a tool that the scholars there have looked at other Greek texts where we kind of piece together what it means. But we know what this means, but why does it show up here? Well, it shows up, I think, somewhat surprisingly in other places. Now, here's a place that it's not surprising to find it at all. We would expect it to be here. And a fun little tidbit about this. So in Ephesians 6, we have the full armor of God passage here. But before that, setting that up, he says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers," is how ESV translates it. Part of that word, half of that word, is cosmos. "Over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." Are you surprised to find the concept of cosmos in this context? I'm not. That's what we're dealing with. Fun fact. The word translated cosmic powers over here, laser pointers don't show up on LED screens, or LCD, whatever we're dealing with, is a compound word in the Greek, half of which is cosmos and half of which is kratos. So it's the idea of these rulers over, or these powers in the universe at large. Fun fact, doesn't have too much to do with what we're doing other than the fact these are both of our Greek words in one. But this is fine, this is normal. Cosmic powers, yes, that's cosmos. But where I didn't expect to find it was, for example, and we're going to look at three different texts pretty quickly here. In 1 Timothy 2:9, where it says, likewise also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel. Not the word respectable here, but the word adorn is from the word cosmos. Again, pretty much is just the word cosmos. We're going to see it again in Titus 2, verses 9 and 10. 9, just so that we know we're talking about bondservants. Verse 10, I believe, picks up with not pilfering, but showing all good faith, so that in everything they may adorn, they may cosmos the doctrine of God, our Savior. What? Last one, and this one's just like the first in 1 Timothy, the other kind of parallel passage about dress. These are our bookmarks for talking about modesty, right? Do not let your adorning, read this one literally. Don't let your universe, don't let your cosmos be external. The braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear, but let your, and the Greek word doesn't show up again, we kind of supply it in the translation, but rather it should be the hidden person of the heart. I promise I have the rest of that here. With the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn, or cosmos, themselves by submitting to their own husbands. So in three of these situations, the English Standard Version translators chose the word adorn pretty consistently. And I can make some sense of that. There's something orderly about adorning, especially the instruction to adorn yourself deliberately that's going on here, especially in the 1 Timothy 2 and 1 Peter 3 passage. You're deliberately choosing what you are putting on is how we normally think about it. And there's something orderly about it, right? We have a phrase, an expression to talk about what a normal guy I am. I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. That's orderly, right? Doesn't matter if you do that before or after you put your shirt on. It just matters that you do something like both, right? But that's being orderly, kind of. The bondservant passage in Titus 2 is kind of curious that where there's this concept of adorning oneself with the doctrine of God. This is why I went back to Genesis 1. When God creates the cosmos, what I should have done is go a step further and check the Septuagint and see where cosmos shows up in Genesis 1. That's somebody's homework. When God creates the cosmos, all that is, right? He does it in a very orderly way. And he orders every part of it. He creates the seas and he fills them with a bunch of different animals. But even then, not only are there distinct kinds of creatures in the sea, but they all produce after their own kind. That's order. He creates the dry land, right? And he fills it with vegetable and animal life. And he makes distinctions between different kinds of trees and vegetation, and those are orderly, and there's different species of animals, and those are orderly. But then each of those also produce exclusively after their own kind, which is orderly. My favorite part in Genesis 1 is the two ruling pairs, the two governing pairs that God sets up. And one is really easy to miss because we usually focus on the fact that we're the other one, right? When he creates man in his own image, male and female, he sets them up in the midst of creation and gives man and woman dominion over all creation, right? Over all the vegetation and also over all of the animal kingdom. Man has dominion, is entrusted with dominion over all of that. We didn't talk about the birds of the heaven, but same thing. He creates the skies, he fills it with animal life, and he orders it to produce after their own kind. Order, all over. But the first ruling pair he actually created was the greater light to govern or rule the day, and the lesser light to govern or rule the night. What I find so beautiful about this concept is that you and I all have a picture of what it might look like to expect somebody that we're thinking about as an elder to be orderly. You know what it might look like for you, what your expectation might be for somebody to have an orderly life. But one of the issues of modernity is that whether we're intentional or not, some of that language for us, some of what we mean by order, is derived from machines instead of nature. And I'm not interested in appointing an elder who I think is orderly because everything about his life is crisp and calculated. I want somebody who is actually genuinely ordered. Now, when you look up at the starry sky at night, is order the first thing you think of? Do all those stars up there, if you can get away from light pollution enough to see all, something like all the stars, but even just the bunch that you can see on any given night, you look up and you say, wow, what an orderly arrangement. To you and I, who are long disconnected from the tradition of stargazing, it doesn't look terribly ordered. If we were going to order the stars or see the stars as a great beacon or image of orderliness, we would expect them to be arranged in a grid or something like that. But all of humanity has looked to the stars as where God's perfect order has been perfectly preserved and not tainted by sin. The thought has always been that sin has tainted everything under the moon. From the moon down is touched by sin. Everything else is impermeable. It's unchanging. It retains the perfect order that God created. And so it's our model. There's so much that I want to say about that, and I'm not going to turn this into a diatribe on that kind of cosmology. But what I do want us to think about when we're thinking about the basic principle here, this is going to be the wrong slide. Hold on. When we're asking the question, what does respectable or orderly have to do with an elder? I want this person to be genuinely ordered. And the thing I want to connect that to help us to kind of reinforce a distinction between mechanical order and organic order is that an elder, no matter how qualified as an elder, is not going to be better than Jesus. And one of the things that Jesus says about himself and his disciples is that they seem to be, and I think that's an important distinction, driven about by wind. Now, that's an important thing to unpack because there's a bad way to be driven about by the wind. What I'm talking about is John chapter 3 and verse 8. When he's discussing with Nicodemus at night, he says this thing that's really strange, and I've brought this up before. But he says, the wind blows, and you know that it's blowing because you can feel it blowing, but you don't know where it came from and you don't know where it's going. You don't know the origin of the wind. You don't know the end of the wind. All you know is that it's blowing. You see that it's blowing. He says it's the same way for those who are led by the Spirit. You don't know what the Spirit is doing behind or before, but you can see the Spirit working. When you look at Jesus's life and times, you do that study of you try to figure out, okay, Jesus went from here to there and from there to there, and we can kind of see some connections of why he did it. But one of the things that seldom that he would seldom be accused of is having a really clearly logical and consistent plan for where he was going to be. He doesn't start with his 3-year plan of exactly where he's going to go and how he's going to get there and why. Now, to a degree, he knows it's his time to do and not, but he keeps that power kind of managed, using it only as is best for the kingdom. But he also, what he is he's ordered in his reason to go from one place to another. The way that he acts, the way that he makes decisions is a reflection of divine order. Again, we think of an ordered life, a well-ordered life, as not having any surprises. Everything has a place and everything is in its place, and he's punctual and he time blocks and he keeps his productivity calendar, and his time management is just impeccable and precise. Every minute is accounted for. That can be true, but that's not the biblical picture. The biblical picture of an ordered life is that the thing you're doing next is the thing that you should be doing next. Not because you have some arbitrary, albeit well-guided, idea of what you're doing at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, but because based on what happened on Monday, and maybe based on what you were told 30 minutes ago, the thing that you're doing next is the well-ordered thing for you to be doing next. Which might not look as organized as we'd prefer somebody to look, because we have a somewhat mechanical view of organization. But what the elder should adorn is not only a conduct and a character and a manner that is ordered and proves self-control, self-mastery, but it also displays heavenly order. That I am ruled by heaven, but I'm also ruling like heaven. Let's not forget that one of the things that it means to be human is to have dominion over your corner of the world, to have dominion over your land, to have dominion over beasts of the field, whatever that's going to mean for you, to have dominion over yourself, and to rule your house well is a term we've already come across. That's going to be part of something that we have to look for when we talk about what it means to be a qualified elder. So this morning, of course, we're thinking about what it means to look for somebody who's above reproach in living a well-ordered life. But with all of these, we're also thinking about ordering our own life, right? We're also thinking about maturing as a Christian, whether I'm ever going to be an elder or not. I need to be thinking about, do I have control over my flesh? Am I a strong person? And if I'm not, I should probably work on becoming a stronger person and using that strength correctly, being ordered in where I choose to use that strength and where I choose not to, and how I exert that strength. But most of all, we might be asking, who's ruling your life? Is the order in your life primarily derived from this world's ideas and ideals, from seeking after this world's things and this world's priorities and this world's goals? Or is your life ordered by the hand of heaven? Is your life ordered by what God has said is the good for us to choose? So as we think about that, both for our own selves and as we keep this in the back of mind to discuss next week for elder qualifications and appointment, I hope that we can be encouraged by that and continue to grow. If there is a need that you have spiritually, we would like to help you order your life and bring it under subjection to the mighty hand of God. So if we can help you in anything this morning, let us know.